Thank you all for bringing such great energy to this space. It feels like a really exciting group to have exploring Belle's work today. My name is Katie St. Clair. I teach painting, drawing, and upper level classes here at Davidson. It's always a privilege to get to work with our students, especially I feel like I've gotten to watch Belle move from freshman all the way through very closely, which has been really, really a pleasure. Man, how much have you changed? And strangely also stayed very uniquely the same, I think, since the get-go. But that said, it's fun to have you all come to these openings and really support students as they have made so much really epic work during their time here. So what else? Oh, I have to thank the Mulherns because they have donated money to help the students actually have a really nice reception. So all the cake you're eating has been paid for by them. Thank you for that. And just thank you all for coming and supporting Belle. I think it's a wonderful thing to have a big community who's willing to show up. It means a lot as an artist. And it's kind of what propels us sometimes to keep going. So thank you all for doing that for Belle. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Belle. But I will say that we'll open up, Belle will give an artist talk, and then afterwards we will open up for questions. Please be thinking while Belle is talking about some exciting questions to ask, and we'll keep the conversation rolling. Thank you again for coming today. And with no further ado, Belle, if you want to come up the stage.
I'd like to thank my mom and Katie a lot because I feel like they've been very influential female characters in my life as I've become an artist. And I would like to thank Nora, who's the muse of that painting over there. And I would like to thank my teachers and professors from many different disciplines, because I tried to be a triple major at one point. And pretty much anyone who's helped me. I tried to invite everyone I thought had been kind to me at some point during my time at Davidson, which ended up being a crazy group of people in a really good way. And so it was really fun kind of thinking about all the different ways people kind of impact you and how you get to respond to that, and then maybe how you can be kind to them or other people, and you never know how that impacts people. So I would like to thank everyone again. I guess I'll open up and kind of talk about my art, which is a really crazy thing to do because most when people ask me what my art is about, I usually go like, I paint hyenas a lot and vultures. But I think there's a core to that because I'm a biology major too, even though far less maybe I wouldn't say typical, but I'm not deeply ingrained in STEM culture in that way. I more think it's really cool that like fungus can grow on animals. Yeah. But I think at the core of it, biology and some of the tenets of biology really inspired me. You think like we watch Nat Geo and we see like the lion being chased by the gazelle, and there's always that moment it's like, don't die, gazelle. And then you realize that if the lion doesn't kill the gazelle, then the baby lion that the lion has at home dies. And then it's like this mess where everything dies, and if something lives and the other thing dies, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible, and you just don't know where to start from there. And I think kind of that space of like, well, is it bad, is it good, is it evil, is it like pure, really started me on this path in my art at least. And it was kind of this idea of maybe not understanding or giving answers to what's good and what's evil, but kind of how do you capture that moment where things are unraveling but also making themselves. So I think in a really crazy way that informed my knitting practice. You'll kind of see around that there's a lot of this yarn in my paintings, and actually I twisted it. So I cut up these paintings and then I would twist it, and then I would weave in like wool, or in this case, this is dyed with turmeric and cabbage, and I stinked up my entire apartment. As we can admit. But that being said, I was really interested in this idea of, I thought about how you're killing the cabbage to get this really brilliant dye, and then also in the same place, a lot of this is, there's an unraveling nature, but it's also mending itself together. And I think this idea of freezing a moment where we're all in progress, where things are both dying and living, started becoming the questions I was asking during my art. My last piece, it's kind of over there. You guys can see it. It's the dead lamb, the dead sheep. I think this became a guide for how I didn't seek to answer it, but I started wondering how we might accept that maybe it's not bad or it's good, but it's kind of all a part of a larger cycle. I also would like to speak a little bit about the power of narrative and mythology in my works. I was almost a classical languages major, and I regret it sometimes I wasn't, and I loved it, and I would like to thank Professor Cheshire for all the love for that subject. But this idea of storied narratives constantly not only being a part of our lives, like people are constantly captivated by jealousy or anger or love, and even more in peace, as I'm reading in my class today, people are always like knee deep in some sort of issue, and we continuously repeat it even if we shouldn't. I also was interested to see how that was transposed onto animals. This idea that animals could fall in love or they felt guilty. Specifically, if you see the lionfish over there, the one right above the lionfish, this idea of cradling something you're killing became really interesting. I think back to paintings where it's this idea of you're holding something which you created a terrible thing, but perhaps it's also a larger part of the world. So I guess with that being said, it was my way of trying to make it okay that the baby gazelle dies in the end. Yeah, okay, that's it.
Open up for questions if anyone has anything.
I got a question now.
Yeah.
I know you did other paintings that were like the same theme. What made you choose the paintings that you did to put in there?
Oh, that's a great question, actually, because I don't know if some of you, but I had this huge snake painting. That was...
Or the one with the horse?
Or the one with the horse, yes, exactly. I'm not sure. I think it's starting to become, I didn't realize this when I started painting, but you're making almost a playlist when you curate paintings versus an album. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to make these paintings and they're all going to work really well together. You start to realize, like, well, actually, and there's a lot of my paintings that have a backside to them that I hated, like, completely hated. Like, there's a lot of hatred in my paintings on the backside. It's like, what was I doing? So I think I started realizing that some of the issues I was having with one painting helped solve another painting. For example, there's a backside to the lamb painting that is actually a painting of my brother. That I hated. And I was like, this is terrible. So I put it on a wall and I painted something else on it. So I think I started choosing them because they were speaking to each other in a way that answered my larger questions, which starts to think about, is a painting alone a painting, or maybe it's the conversation with the larger paintings around it. So, yeah.
Bridging off of that question, maybe you want to tell people about the backside of the painting and how it's influenced maybe a new technique?
Yeah. Well, this was, I would say, this had a 4 lifetime painting. The first part of the painting was an expanse, and it was a rib cage of a cow, and there was like a woman holding the cow, and me and Katie were looking at it. She was like, "Belle, you really got to get together." And I was like, yeah. So then I cut up that painting, and I was like, "Okay, we're getting somewhere." And I put it on a different painting, and then I painted a dead cow, and I sewed all that part together. And then we looked at it, and we were like, "Yeah, not there. We got to get it together." So then we flipped it over, and we ended up really liking this kind of, almost like, I think back to the natural, like genetics, for example, or like you probably no one is opening it, but the inside of it, all of our bodies, they're all operating under this code that we don't understand, but it works. And I was really interested in the way all of these sewing and all of this like tying together, which made sense when I looked on the back side, was mysterious when I looked this side. Like I didn't know what it was like kind of outlining, but it's outlining the cow on the other side. So I was interested in kind of painting from organic like shapes, because paintings start to become organic the second you decide not to control them completely. It's almost in a weird way, dare I say, a truer way to do science, because you're going in with no variables, with no like constants, with no like even premises to base it off, and you're like, well, I think this might work, and you're wrong all the time. So I felt it started to become a way for me to actually remove my hand and start to actually involve myself with the act of making versus thinking about making, which I really enjoyed. Yeah. Annalise.
I love that term, organic painting, and I feel as a viewer that I'm kind of dissecting your compositions as opposed to taking it all in. Could you talk a little bit more about your process and subject matter? I see a strawberry classical sculpture, Hyena's vulture. Do you have a specific composition in mind, or do you just let it evolve and flow with your?
Yeah. I mean, it comes from I go into a painting and I'm like, wow, I've really done nothing. And then I'm like, I need to do something. And then I'm either reading something or listening to a music, and I have this specific image. For example, this one came from a quote in East of Eden, John Steinbeck, and he talks about a woman the strawberry of life, and some woman cradling the strawberry, and I don't know, it was really John Steinbeck, and you're just whoa. I was I want to paint that. So I was just really captivated by this idea of this juicy strawberry being overtaken almost by this parasitic type thing of a molding thing. And then the vulture came really because the vulture is almost parasitic in its own way. And then I started thinking in a weird way the relationship between a mother and a child. And I have a real issue with this idea of demonizing scavengers or parasites, because even though they take away, don't we all take away from something? And is it okay to take away if it's a larger part of giving? So the mother and child became really out, and it always has been a really important part of my work. A lot of my early work was about my relationship with my mom and kind of how it means to be loved, but also having to leave the nest, and is it okay to fly? So the parasitic nature of a mother and child really was speaking to me in that moment, not in a bad way, but as a way to continue the cycle, because if we're given something, we can then give it away again.
I noticed on one of your pieces back there you used newspaper in addition to yarn. What was your decision on
Why did you tear apart the Davidsonian?
So actually, I got the article. I saw this grammar mistake. I was in Tyler Starr's intro to paperwork, and the problem with a lot of classes I find myself in is that I'm I don't want to do this at all, and then I put it off, and I put it off, and then I'm stuck with whatever immediate thing is in front of me. And in that case, I knew I could twist yarn, and I knew there was paper in front of me, so I'm going to make yarn out of newspaper. And it ended up being one of my projects, and it was a really quick fix, and it ended up being this cool amorphous blob that I was really obsessed with. So then me and Katie were in my studio, and I was having issues with finishing any of my paintings, and she was like, what if you just put that on there? And I was like, okay. And then it created an organism almost, and I felt like it started becoming a language in itself. And there's actually international newspapers woven into that, so it's not just Davidson, it's more of a worldwide phenomenon. So yeah, I don't know, it was an accident, completely. There's far less in my hand in that than I would like to take credit for. Yeah. Anyone? Mama?
Yes, I noticed in your paintings you have hidden paintings, and because I do know you well, because you're my baby, in that painting I see my mom, and I know the exact image, and I can find it because I know.
Yeah.
But do you paint, does that image, do you start with that, or do you add it afterward?
Most all these paintings have a core tenet that I kind of went in with that. And sometimes it gets lost, and sometimes by losing it, I find it in a much more intense way. In that case, I had this, my grandmother, she passed away when I was younger, and I have a really close relationship with my mom, and it's always been almost a tenet of my existence. So it was this idea of what does it mean that motherhood is kind of across all animals. Can this and I was thinking about the saying tiger mom, which is typically terrible. People are that she's a tiger mom. But I was thinking about tigers or any animal, hyenas. They all love their children, even if we can say it's biological. It's the need for the nature to forward itself. But I want to see that the animal just loves its baby. I want it to be raw. I want to believe there's a soul, quote unquote, despite physics majors saying otherwise. So I think when I painted that, it became a platform for me to visually think about an idea, because it's my mom. She's kind of the central figure that you can kind of see in the background. It's below the girl, and then my grandma's the one under almost the umbrella, and then I'm actually this yellow blob. So all of these, in some ways, the overlaying became a huge part of my paintings because it gave me a way to continue having conversations without making it the main deal. Yeah, so, any other questions? Virginia?
Kind of small, but I'm really curious as to why you put the lionfish down low when everything else is like much higher at eye level.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's because it lived in the corner for a large part. I painted it, and it was good. And then I continued painting it, and then I was like, killed it. And it was just like this mess. And then I cut it out, because I was like, you don't even deserve to be a painting anymore. And I stapled it in the bottom of my, as you can see, a lot of paintings just come from like, ah! And then you show up the next day and deal with it. And so I put it in the corner, and then it was kind of like, who's that little fella? Like, he's just hanging out. And then that was right after I put the newspaper, and then it was kind of seeing how I can continue making like these creatures more creature-like. So it was to kind of move it away from a painting and more make it just start to become a little animal. Yeah. So, Lennox?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering, so you said that you have a lot of inspiration from like Greek mythologists, like
Yeah.
you can see in like the Hellenic statues and all the cool motifs and like
Yeah.
and random stuff. Are there any particular myths that you take direct inspiration from, or is it just kind of like themes? And things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first paintings I kind of like, it hit me that I was like, oh, I do like this whole art thing was I terrible with names, but it's the one about the guy who serves his son to the gods, and then he gets caught with it.
Yeah.
Yes, Tantalus. And that was a really big thing because it's like who tries to do the whole cannibalism thing on the slide? And that started making me think about kind of all the different ways we offer up the people around us, whether we realize it or not. I'm really interested in a lot of myths about motherhood. I think about Apollo and Diana. Yeah. And the twins, everything's leaving my mind. But I've also moved past that. I've not moved past it, but continued my practice to a more worldwide myths in general. Aesop's Fables was a big one. The sour grape stories, that's the Nora one. That if Aesop's Fables was a big thing. Anything with mythology, aphorism. Right now, there's a huge one that I thought about often. I translated it in Chinese class, was The Chinese Farmer, and it's about this guy who he loses his horse, and then they're like, oh, that's so bad, but then he comes back with 3 more, and it's, oh, that's so good, and then it's kind of this whole story where nothing is good or bad, but it just is. And that maybe kind of push forward all my life. Yeah. Niven?
I'm curious about the one with the lamb, the dead one.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it took a toll on you to paint a dead baby lamb, or what you were thinking about or listening to when you were painting the dead baby lamb.
Yeah.
And who is on top and below?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was showing my camera roll to Yaya. I was showing, he's like, there's a lot of dead animal pictures on this. Belle, are you okay? It's like, it's for artistic inspiration. But I do believe there's a certain morbidity. Like, what does it mean to first take the picture of these dead animals, then to save them, and then to look at them in your album for regular artistic inspiration? It's kind of like, it's weird. But I believe, at least the way I thought about it, was there was a respect to it. There was this idea of, at least for me, that this sheep died anonymous, which is very silly, but it died, and then now there's this weird stock photo of it on the internet, and no one knows the sheep, but it gave me peace to know that I was in some ways thinking about it and then putting it in a painting where perhaps its death isn't morbid, but there is a purpose to it in the larger. They're with poppy flowers. Flowers started to become an important almost dialect I was experimenting in, because poppies are this idea of eternal sleep, and that leads to the women above it, which everyone can kind of decide if they're sleeping or dead or resting their eyes. So it kind of, I was thinking about the 3 muses, to go off the Greek question, and kind of who gets to decide these things and if they're right. Similarly with this one, this is chrysanthemums, which there's a really cool story about that, about a little girl, it's in the Balkans, a little girl, her mom's dying, and Death comes and she's like, please don't kill my mom, and Death is like, I can expand her life as many petals on a flower. So the little girl, she can't find anything but a daisy, and she rips all the daisy petals into like a 20 or odd, so there's a huge amount of petals, and Death, like being so inspired by this girl's act of love, expands her mom and creates the chrysanthemum. Which I just felt that, because it's called lamb in a rib cage, because again, it's up to interpretation. Is the lamb being just born, or is it dying right now? And so how do we celebrate that, and how do we respect it, and perhaps not mourn it, but allow it to be, because we'll also be lambs in the field of chrysanthemums perhaps one day. I don't know. Yeah. Trent.
Hi, I just want to say first off, I'm so proud of you. I have 2 questions. We've obviously done a lot of walks together. I just wanted to ask, how has your viewpoints on the world changed through your art process this past year, and then also past 4 years at Davidson? And then if you could describe your artwork in 3 onomatopoeias, because how would you describe your art process and your artwork?
Okay, the onomatopoeias is for last. But, okay, so the first one, I think it's allowed me to kind of accept that things fall apart all the time, and that our hand in things messes things up, but they also let them bring things back. I feel like it's right now in our life, we're all, especially being a senior, we're all trying to figure out the next part, like, or at least I am. Like, what is it all supposed to mean? Like, how is this whole painting supposed to look like? But in some ways, working through so many things in a very tactile nature has allowed me to accept kind of the limits of ourselves, but also how we're continuously able to build off of them. Like, so many paintings I've messed that I haven't liked. If they hadn't existed, I couldn't have made the paintings I've loved. Which is it's a very like a Pinterest-like answer. But I do believe that we have to make so many mistakes and make so many things that we're just aggravated from, and the negative emotions have to exist so we grow. So it hasn't necessarily gotten rid of the negative emotions or anxiety for the future, but it's allowed me to know that things come back to themselves. And if you observe for something that's good, okay, one more story. My dad always told me when I was growing up, he would be like, my mom, the vulture in a field of flowers looks for a dead animal. And that could be good or bad, because the vulture wants to see the dead animal, but you find whatever you're looking for. And sometimes you get to see both, but you will kind of come back to whatever, again, you're looking for. The Audubon, I think, I'm not going to do them, but I think there's a grunt in there. Like, maybe there's like a chittering cat, you know, when they see like a bird. And like, boom!
Okay. I think that was kind of a perfect way. Well, thank you all again for coming. Please stay and ask them more questions. Eat food, look at the work, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you guys.